Dr. Rachel Keller hunched over her computer terminal at Fermilab, her eyes burning from staring at the radiation pattern anomalies for 18 straight hours. The data made no sense. Coherent energy bursts from deep space, perfectly modulated at frequencies that shouldn't naturally occur. She brushed a strand of auburn hair from her face and reached for her cold coffee when the facility's emergency alarm blared. Dr. Keller to the main observatory, immediately, the intercom announced with unusual urgency. Racing down the corridor, Rachel nearly collided with Dr. James Foster, her colleague whose face had drained of all color. "They're here," he whispered, pulling her toward the observation deck. The night sky above the facility blazed with pulsing lights, not stars, but massive objects in perfect geometric formation. Rachel's phone buzzed with emergency alerts as social media exploded with similar sightings worldwide. Within minutes, the facility's secure line rang. The caller identified himself as Colonel Marcus Wright, Department of Defense. "Dr. Keller, I'm en route to your location. The President has authorized emergency protocols. Whatever you're seeing up there, it's appearing over every major city on Earth." By dawn, military vehicles surrounded Fermilab. Colonel Wright, a stern-faced man with calculating eyes and military precision in every movement, strode into Rachel's lab flanked by armed personnel. "Tell me everything you know," he demanded without introduction. Rachel explained the radiation patterns, showing how they'd intensified over 3 weeks. "These aren't random cosmic events, Colonel. They're signals, communication, or navigation beacons. Whatever's up there, it came here deliberately." The facility's power flickered as a deafening hum filled the air. Outside, a massive disc-shaped craft descended through the clouds, its surface rippling with iridescent energy. Smaller crafts broke formation, hovering over Chicago's skyline, visible in the distance. "My God," whispered Wright, his military composure momentarily broken. The first beam struck without warning, a concentrated pulse of energy that sliced through the Chicago skyline, severing the top third of the Willis Tower. As the building's upper floors collapsed in slow motion, Rachel's instruments recorded energy readings off the scale. "It's a directed energy weapon," she explained, her voice shaking. "Essentially a laser, but operating on principles we've only theorized about." Wright's secure phone rang. His face hardened as he listened. "They're hitting power grids worldwide. Pentagon, White House, and major military installations are dark." Rachel watched in horror as 3 F-22 Raptors streaked toward the hovering craft. The jets approached with missiles armed, but before they could fire, 3 precise energy beams lanced out. Where fighter jets had been, only dispersing particles remained, falling like metallic rain. "Those pilots never had a chance," Wright said, his jaw clenched tight. Rachel stared at her instruments, mind racing through calculations. The beams operate on consistent wavelengths. They're predictable despite their power. That gives us something to work with. "Work with how?" Wright demanded. "You saw what happened to those jets." Rachel turned to him, determination replacing fear. "Colonel, they may have technology we can't match, but they're still bound by the laws of physics. And physics is something I understand." As night fell, more craft appeared. Millions watched in terror as the visitors positioned themselves over every major population center worldwide. Humanity faced an enemy with weapons beyond their comprehension. But in a small lab in Illinois, Rachel Keller began formulating the first human response, not with matching firepower, but with the fundamental principles of the universe itself. 3 days after first contact, Rachel worked feverishly in the underground lab that Colonel Wright had established beneath Fermilab. The surface facilities had been evacuated after alien crafts began systematically targeting research centers worldwide. Rachel had insisted on bringing 2 people with her: Dr. Eli Shun, a theoretical physicist whose work on quantum reflection had earned him a near Nobel, and Sarah Dawson, an engineer with a gift for improvisation. The trio had barely slept, fueled by military-grade caffeine and the knowledge that humanity's survival might depend on their work. The spectral analysis is consistent, Eli said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion, as he pointed to the screen displaying the alien weapon signatures. Every beam operates on the same fundamental wavelength pattern, just with varying intensities. Rachel nodded, her mind racing through possibilities. They're efficient, I'll give them that. But efficiency creates predictability. She turned to Sarah, who was already fabricating a small panel using materials they'd salvaged. How close are we? Sarah looked up, her hands steady despite 30 hours without sleep. The composite is setting. If your calculations are right, this surface should be able to redirect their energy beams rather than absorb them. Colonel Wright entered the lab, his uniform disheveled. The military man's confident facade had cracked after watching Washington, D.C. fall the previous day. Chicago's evacuation is at 60%, but we're running out of time. The aliens are methodically working through major cities. Our weapons aren't even scratching their hulls. Rachel met his gaze. We don't need to match their firepower. We just need to understand the physics they're exploiting. She pointed to their prototype. Their lasers operate on principles we recognize. They're just more advanced. But light is light. Energy is energy. If we can create surfaces with the right reflective properties, we can turn their weapons against them. Wright looked skeptical. You want to fight space invaders with mirrors? Eli stepped forward. Not mirrors, Colonel. These are quantum-engineered metamaterials that can redirect specific wavelengths while absorbing others. It's like having a shield that knows exactly what's hitting it. A distant explosion shook dust from the ceiling. The aliens were getting closer. Sarah carefully lifted the completed prototype panel. It's ready for testing. Wright's radio crackled with panicked reports of alien craft approaching the outskirts of Chicago. Rachel made a decision. We need a field test. Now. The small town of Batavia, just west of Fermilab, had become a refugee collection point. As the team arrived with their prototype, an alien scout craft appeared overhead, its weapon ports glowing with building energy. Rachel positioned the panel while Eli calibrated it to the specific frequency they'd detected. Civilians screamed and ran for cover as the alien craft fired its first shot. The beam struck the panel and immediately reflected upward at a precise angle, striking the alien craft's underside. The vessel shuddered, its hull integrity compromised by its own weapon. It retreated hastily, trailing smoke and debris. Wright stared in disbelief. It worked. For the first time in days, hope flickered in Rachel's eyes. This is just the beginning. We need to scale up production immediately. As they drove back to the lab, Rachel watched the Chicago skyline where larger alien ships were gathering. She knew they had discovered humanity's first real defense, but the aliens' methodical destruction continued elsewhere. They had a foothold, but the true battle was just beginning. Sarah squeezed Rachel's shoulder. We can do this, she said with quiet determination. Rachel nodded, already calculating the materials they would need to protect millions of lives. Physics doesn't care how advanced they are, she replied. The same rules apply to everyone in this universe. Even them. 2 weeks into the invasion, humanity had shifted from pure defense to organized resistance. Military factories worldwide had been converted to produce Rachel's reflective technology, now refined into lightweight panels that could be mounted on vehicles and buildings. The aliens had responded by intensifying their attacks, particularly targeting production facilities. Rachel stood in the command center beneath Chicago's ruins, watching tactical displays showing alien ground forces advancing through the city's northern suburbs. These weren't just ships anymore. The invaders had deployed bipedal combat units that moved with unsettling precision through the streets. Colonel Wright entered, his face gaunt from sleepless nights, coordinating global defense efforts. The reflectors are working against their energy weapons, but they're adapting. They're using kinetic projectiles now, essentially railguns that our reflectors can't redirect. Rachel nodded grimly. They're learning. We need to stay ahead of them. She turned to Eli, who was analyzing captured alien technology. "Anything useful?" Eli looked up, excitement breaking through his exhaustion. "Their communication systems. They're using quantum-entangled particles for instantaneous transmission, but the entanglement is maintained through a specific carrier frequency. If we could disrupt that frequency..." Sarah, who had been quietly working at her station, suddenly straightened. "I think I can build a disruptor using modified radio equipment. It won't be elegant, but it might create enough interference to temporarily blind them." Wright's eyes narrowed with strategic calculation. "If we could disrupt their communications during a coordinated strike," Rachel completed his thought, "we could isolate their units from the mothership. Cut off the head, even temporarily." The colonel nodded decisively. "I'm assembling a strike team to capture more of their technology. We need to understand how their systems work at a fundamental level." Rachel felt a chill. "That's a suicide mission, Marcus." It was the first time she'd used his first name, and the shift wasn't lost on either of them. Wright's expression softened momentarily. "Sometimes that's what's required." The mission was planned for dawn. Wright would lead a small team into an alien forward base that had been established in what was once Grant Park. Rachel worked through the night with Sarah to develop a portable disruptor that might give the team a fighting chance. As Wright prepared to leave, Rachel approached him. "The disruptor has a range of about 50 meters. You'll need to get close." Wright checked his weapon, a conventional rifle that seemed woefully inadequate against alien technology. "Close is what we do best." Rachel hesitated, then impulsively handed him her father's pocket watch. "For luck, I expect it back." Wright's hand closed around the watch, his fingers briefly touching hers. "Count on it, Doctor." The strike team departed as the first light of dawn broke over Chicago's shattered skyline. Rachel, Eli, and Sarah monitored their progress through body cameras. For 40 agonizing minutes, everything went according to plan. The team infiltrated the alien position, deployed Sarah's disruptor, and began collecting technology samples. Then everything went wrong. Alien reinforcements arrived without warning. The team's escape route was cut off. Through the chaotic feed from Wright's camera, Rachel watched in horror as he ordered his team to retreat while he provided covering fire. "Colonel, fall back now," she shouted into the comm. Wright's voice came through, eerily calm amid the sounds of combat. "Not an option, Doctor. Get this data back to the lab. It's what matters." The last image from his camera showed him charging toward an alien command unit, Sarah's disruptor in one hand, detonator in the other. The feed went white, then black. Rachel stood frozen, her hand pressed against the monitor. Eli gently pulled her away as the surviving team members returned, carrying alien communication devices and weapon components. "He knew what he was doing, Rachel," Eli said softly. Rachel straightened, grief hardening into resolve. "Then we make it count." She turned to the recovered technology, determined that Wright's sacrifice would become the turning point they desperately needed. The alien technology, recovered by Wright's team, proved invaluable. After 3 days of relentless analysis, Rachel discovered something extraordinary in the communication devices. The aliens weren't just vulnerable to disruption. Their biological systems were integrated with their technology through radiation frequencies that human physiology simply couldn't detect. "They're cyborgs," Rachel explained to the assembled military leadership. "Their bodies and ships are connected through quantum entanglement, but that connection requires constant maintenance through specific radiation patterns." Eli expanded on her discovery, his excitement breaking through his grief over Wright's loss. "It's like they re-swimming in an ocean of radiation that's invisible to us, but essential to them. Disrupt that ocean, and they lose cohesion." The plan that emerged was audacious. A massive coordinated attack on the alien mothership hovering over Lake Michigan. While conventional forces would deploy reflective technology to defend against energy weapons, Rachel and Eli would lead a small team to deploy a modified particle accelerator repurposed from Fermilab as equipment that could generate the disruptive frequencies at unprecedented scale. The night before the attack, Rachel found Sarah alone in the lab, modifying equipment. "You should rest," Rachel said softly. Sarah didn't look up. "So should you." A moment of silence passed between them. "Wright knew, didn't he?" Sarah finally asked. "About the radiation vulnerability. That's why he went for the command unit." Rachel nodded slowly. "I think he suspected. He was always more perceptive than he let on." Sarah set down her tools. "I keep thinking about what we're fighting for. Not just survival. What comes after, if we win?" Rachel had been avoiding this very thought. "One problem at a time," she said, but her mind flashed to Wright's face, to the brief human connection they'd shared before he'd sacrificed himself. The attack began at dawn. Military forces equipped with reflective technology engaged alien ground forces throughout Chicago's ruins, creating a diversion while Rachel's team approached the mothership in boats modified with stealth technology. The lake waters churned with unnatural currents as they neared the massive craft hovering 50 meters above the surface. "Energy readings are off the charts," Eli whispered, checking their makeshift sensors. "The mothership is generating enough power to level the entire Midwest." Rachel guided their boat directly beneath the alien vessel. "That's our target. All that energy has to have a focal point." Sarah deployed their equipment, the particle accelerator, modified to generate precisely the frequency that would disrupt the aliens' biological-technological interface. As they activated the device, the mothership detected them. Energy weapons began targeting the water around them, creating massive steam clouds that provided unexpected cover. "It's working!" Eli shouted over the chaos. "Their targeting systems are degrading." The mothership descended lower, as if trying to crush them beneath its massive hull. Rachel realized with horror that they were now too close to escape the blast radius of their own device. "We need to increase power," she shouted. "Full spectrum disruption." Eli shook his head. "The equipment can't handle it. It'll melt down." Rachel looked at him, understanding passing between them. "Get Sarah out of here. I'll stay and maintain the equipment as long as possible." Eli's face hardened with resolve. "No, the calculations are mine. I need to make the final adjustments." Before Rachel could protest, Eli shoved her toward Sarah. "Go. This is physics, Rachel. Conservation of energy. A fair trade." Sarah pulled Rachel toward their escape boat as Eli turned back to the equipment, making rapid adjustments as the mothership descended further. The last Rachel saw of him was his silhouette against the blinding light of the alien craft, his hands steady on the controls. They were barely 100 meters away when the disruption wave reached critical amplitude. The mothership shuddered, its perfect geometric form distorting as internal systems failed catastrophically. Energy weapons fired randomly, some beams reflecting off the water to strike the vessel itself. Rachel watched, tears streaming down her face. As the mothership began to break apart, secondary explosions cascading through its structure. In its death throes, the alien vessel released one final energy pulse that rippled across the lake surface. As the wave passed through their boat, Rachel felt something strange, a momentary connection to something vast and incomprehensible, as if the aliens themselves were transmitting one final message. Then the mothership crashed into Lake Michigan with a detonation that sent water hundreds of meters into the air. The destruction of the Chicago mothership marked humanity's first major victory, but the war was far from over. Within days, the remaining alien vessels worldwide began to change their attack patterns. Rachel analyzed the new data from her makeshift lab in the ruins of Fermilab, her heart heavy with the loss of Eli. The reflective technology that had protected them was becoming less effective as the aliens adjusted their weapons to cycle through multiple frequencies simultaneously. "They're learning," Rachel told Sarah, as they examined footage of a failed defense in Barcelona. "They've modified their lasers to overcome our reflective countermeasures." Sarah, who had barely spoken since Ali's sacrifice, looked up from her workstation. "But their adaptation creates a new vulnerability. Look at the energy signature. They're drawing more power to maintain the frequency shifts. Rachel studied the readings, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. You're right. They're burning through resources faster. And there's something else. The radiation pattern has changed. The realization struck her like lightning. They're overcompensating. The new pattern is even more susceptible to disruption at the quantum level. 3 months after first contact, the remaining alien forces consolidated around CERN in Switzerland, drawn to the Large Hadron Collider, the most powerful particle accelerator on Earth. Intelligence suggested they were attempting to build a device that would amplify their weapons beyond anything previously seen. Rachel knew this was both humanity's greatest threat and its final opportunity. They want the collider to create a stable wormhole, she explained to the assembled United Nations Security Council via secure video link. If they succeed, they'll bring reinforcements or worse, turn it into a planet-killing weapon. The plan that formed was born of desperation and brilliance. While military forces would engage the aliens directly, Rachel and Sarah would infiltrate CERN and reconfigure the collider to generate a quantum disruption field that would target the aliens. Biological-technological interface on a global scale. The journey to Geneva was perilous. Twice their transport was nearly discovered by alien patrols. When they finally reached CERN's damaged perimeter, Rachel was shocked by the transformation. The once pristine scientific facility had been grotesquely merged with alien technology. Organic-looking conduits snaking through buildings and connecting to the collider ring below ground. They've accelerated the integration, Sarah whispered, as they used stolen alien identification to bypass security measures. At this rate, they'll have the wormhole stabilized within hours. They made their way to the control center, finding it eerily empty of both humans and aliens. Rachel began working on the collider systems, while Sarah established their disruptor technology. This feels wrong, Sarah said suddenly, looking around the room. Where are they? The answer came moments later, as alarms blared throughout the facility. On the monitors, they watched alien troops converging on their position. They knew we were coming, Rachel realized. They let us get this far. Sarah checked the security feeds. We're surrounded. No way out. Rachel looked at the collider controls, then at the disruption device they'd brought. A terrible clarity came over her. There is a way. But only one of us is getting out. Sarah understood immediately. No, not again. I won't lose you too. Rachel gripped her friend's shoulders. The disruption needs to be triggered manually from here, but someone needs to carry the quantum signature data back to what's left of our forces. Without it, this is just a temporary victory. Sarah shook her head, tears streaming down her face. There has to be another way. Physics doesn't offer alternatives, Sarah. Conservation of energy, like Eli said. A fair trade. Rachel pressed a data drive into Sarah's hand. Take the maintenance tunnel. It leads to the surface 2 kilometers east. As alien forces breached the outer doors, Rachel pushed Sarah toward the escape route. Their eyes met one final time, years of friendship and shared struggle passing between them. Tell them, Rachel said softly, that in the end, it wasn't about matching their technology. It was about understanding the universe better than they did. After Sarah disappeared into the tunnel, Rachel turned back to the controls. She reconfigured the collider to generate a quantum disruption field that would resonate with the exact frequency of the aliens' biological-technological interface. As the massive machine powered up, she thought of Wright, of Eli, of all they had lost and fought for. The aliens broke through the final door, just as Rachel initiated the sequence. The leader approached, its partly mechanical form somehow conveying confusion as it observed her calm demeanor. You never understood, Rachel told the creature as energy began to surge through the facility. Physics isn't just a tool. It's the language of reality. The collider reached critical energy levels, generating a disruption field that expanded outward at the speed of light. Rachel closed her eyes as the wave passed through her, feeling a strange sense of peace as the aliens around her collapsed, their integrated systems failing catastrophically. The wave continued outward, encompassing the planet, affecting only the specific quantum signature of alien biology. In research stations and military bases worldwide, survivors watched as alien forces simultaneously collapsed. Sarah delivered the data that explained the phenomenon and provided protection against future invasions. 1 year later, she stood at the memorial erected at Fermilab, where statues of Rachel, Eli, and Colonel Wright faced the stars. "They came with advanced technology," she told the assembled crowd on the anniversary of victory. "We responded with understanding. They used lasers. We used physics. And in that fundamental knowledge of how the universe works, humanity found not just its defense, but its future." As night fell, Sarah remained alone at the memorial, looking up at the stars that once brought terror, but now represented possibility. In her hand, she held Wright's pocket watch, returned to Rachel's belongings after his final mission, and now the last physical connection to her friends. "The universe is still speaking," she whispered to their memory. "And thanks to you, we're still here to listen."